Lord Ayyappa is worshipped with sandal paste, denoting earth, with deepam, denoting fire, with incense, denoting air, and by offerings, denoting water, and with flowers, denoting sky. O Lord Ayyappa, you are a saint. You are celibate with gnana, knowledge, and in deep meditations. O Lord, bless me with the 5 elements. You are adorned with Shiva and Vaishnava symbols. You are born as a human being with 8 beauties.
Welcome to the Higher Mind Yoga Podcast. This is podcast 11. And in the beginning there, you heard a little bit of a documentary that I found online about Lord Ayyappa, Swami Ayyappa, which is an interesting story behind his mythology, or mythology. Sometimes I hear it pronounced that way. But anyway, I mentioned on other podcasts my interest, my devotion, my dream of Mahadev Shiva, Lord Shiva. So trying to learn more about that aspect of yoga, since Shiva is named the Adi Yogi, the first yogi, the ultimate meditator, sitting up on Mount Kailash, interwoven into the very colorful tapestry of yoga. And I'm enjoying learning and just going a little deeper into different aspects of Hinduism, where yoga actually sprouted from and came from, or is intertwined. The Yoga Sutras are very secular. They're pretty much just suggestions, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and then they're up for discussion, and there's different interpretations, but there's not really too much talk about certain deities, but nonetheless, it's interesting. Patanjali's, like, you see Patanjali, you see that the name, and it's even a brand, Baba Ramdev's brand in India, and the translation. Those who know Sanskrit, I know very little. I just know a few words, and I'm just cracking the ice on it right now. Just like just a little surface there. And when I first spotted the sutras, it was ran, I think, Barnes and Noble, some bookstore, whatever. And this was back in the deep dark days of heavy metal. And I don't know, I was in there looking for something, I don't know. Probably a book on black magic or something, I don't know. But anyway, there's a religious section there. Well, this philosophy, this religion, Eastern, that. And I picked up, the Yoga Sutras. I think it had an interesting cover. I think, I don't know if it had Patanjali, because if you see the image of Patanjali's, the fallen angel, or fallen from angel, Pata meaning fallen, or flying, translates, and Anjali, angel, Anjali, like, Anjali Mudra that you hear. So when I first opened it up, of course, the first thing that popped out, I just opened it up, and right away it was the attainment of mystical powers. So it kind of fed into the whole the genre that I was at the time, and still I'm kind of, have my toe still dipped into it, and I love all the mystical and the mysterious, and kind of the spooky side of things. Should talk. Maybe I should change the podcast to the spooky yoga podcast. But anyway, getting back to Lord Ayyappa there. So Lord Ayyappa. So it's just interesting how things kind of come into consciousness, or like why does Lord Ayyappa come into my consciousness? And I'll expand on that. So Lord Ayyappa. So I listened to a podcast. It's called Puja, and I think the website is puja.net, the Puja podcast. I'm pretty sure that's it. And look it up. I'll put a link on, where, highermindyoga.com, where you can help support the podcast for as little as $1. That's the Patreon site. I'll put you there, and there's links to different things and previous podcast links and all that kind of stuff there, so you can check that out. So I'll put a link to that. So since I'm a student of yoga, I guess, I'm in my yogic study, self-imposed yogic study here. So I had the podcast in my queue of things that I've listened to, just there. And at the end of the podcast, there's usually some kind of devotional chant or some mantra or something at the end, and it's musical. So sometimes I'll listen through it. Sometimes they're really long, and I'll want to listen to them differently, not while I listen to the podcast, because sometimes I listen to the podcast late at night. So anyway, it was loaded on my phone, and I just happened to get in my vehicle, and just randomly, and I had this podcast sitting there, I don't know, maybe it could have been more than a year sitting on my phone, and I never got to listen to the whole last part. And I kind of was saving it because I found the story interesting that was spoken on there. Ben Collins, I think the gentleman's name is. But like I said, I'll post a link there, highermindyoga.com. So the podcast just came on randomly over the Bluetooth, and it was the episode of Ayyappa, which is an interesting story, and I'll get into that right now. So with my devotion and interest in Shiva, Mahadev, Shivji. So I decided to just go a little deeper in the research and go, hey, let me see what this is about. This sounds like an interesting story in the pantheon of all the many stories in the Vedas, the Puranas, all the countless books, and you can get lost in all the writings. But anyway, so I started doing a little research, and then most people are familiar. You're familiar if you're studying yoga and any interest in this subject. You know the pantheon. There's Shiva, the destroyer, and some think the supreme. The energy, the force behind the whole universe. And then Vishnu, the preserver, and then springs from Vishnu's belly button in a lotus is Lord Brahma, the creator. So he creates all the things of form for us, and I guess partially illusion and all that stuff. But anyway, so we have Shiva and we have Vishnu. So somehow in the stories, the many stories, the many enveloping, colorful just creative stuff. But anyway, so Vishnu and Shiva have a son. Now, how does this happen, you might ask? Since they're portrayed both as male energy and all of that, and that's a strong part of some cultures. And so, and in this culture, it seems pretty strong in certain aspects. So we have Shiva and Vishnu, and somehow they create Ayyappa. So, from my understanding in my research, and believe me, if I could be corrected at any point here, but the way I understand it, so here's the story. So there's the churning of the ocean of milk. All right. So in this, I'll give you a little backstory on that, and then bring you to this. And if you want, I'll actually, if you want, you can actually watch this amazing soap opera presentation on YouTube. I'll put a link on highermindyoga.com, of course. The Shiva Mahapurana. It's played out in a very campy kind of soap opera-ish, in a fashion of a lot of the Indian productions. But they do give you the stories, and reminds me of my childhood, like early morning programming, and on Saturday mornings you would see these, incredibly wild programs. And I don't know, I guess maybe if you grew up with it, it's like, oh, I know about this, and it's like something boring to you. But me as an adult watching this, I go, wow, I would have loved to have seen this as a kid. This is just amazing. And these are religious stories. They're supposed to be very serious, but they're presented in such a, I don't know, a campy way. It's hard not to really enjoy them. But anyway, yeah, the Shiva. I'll put a link on Higher Mind Yoga. So as the story goes, so the churning of the ocean of milk, and Amrita is supposed to, that's the elixir to give eternal life and power to the devas and the asuras. So they need each other to get this special elixir, the Amrita. And finally, it comes out. And there's another story involving that, but we'll stick to this. We're trying to stay online here with the Ayyappa story. So there's a huge battle between them after they get the Amrita, the good and the bad. The supposed good, the supposed bad. They're actually family members, which is interesting in the mythology. So they're fighting over it, and drops of it fall on parts of the earth, and that's where the Kumbh Mela. So that's another part of the story. We'll talk about Kumbh Mela some other time. For those who don't know about it. So as they're fighting, and then they're like fighting over this elixir was supposed to, the ultimate beverage for the gods and the demons. They need some kind of arbitrator, like who is going to decide who gets what, because they keep fighting over it. And this is one telling of it. The Lord Vishnu, in one of his incarnations, one of his avatars, so Vishnu is Krishna, and he's a few other incarnations in the pantheon of the stories of the Hindu gods. Different incarnations. So in this story, Vishnu turns into this beautiful, beautiful woman, this beautiful goddess that no one can deny. She is so gorgeous. Everyone is in love with her. Mohini. The beauty Mohini. So Mohini comes and she takes the Amrita and she starts dispensing it, but it's Vishnu, so because Vishnu is giving it to all the devas. And there's a few other parts in there where one of the asuras, one of the demons, disguises himself as a deva, and he drinks it, Rahu and whatever, Mars. That's another story. But anyway, so Mohini, the gorgeous seductress Mohini, the illusory Mohini, she's so beautiful. Everyone's in love with her as she's dispensing this, and this is the way the story is told, the way I found it. After Shiva does his part in the churning of the ocean of milk, and that's another story. He sees Mohini, and he just can't stand it. He just can't take it. She's so beautiful. She's so amazing that he has to have her. So, in whatever way the gods combine their energy, they create Ayyappa. So these stories are all just very, very, and they intertwine. So I'll give you a little bit more of that. So Ayyappa is created between Shiva and Vishnu, but Vishnu is taking on the form of Mohini. Okay, so we have that part of the story. So then, what do they do with Ayyappa? They can't raise, Shiva and Mohini can't raise, because there's another part of the story there, so we'll leave that. So Ayyappa is then raised by a couple who can't have any children, a royal couple, and he goes and that's his story right there. Okay, so we'll leave Ayyappa there. And in all these stories, there's a reason why these things happen, even how fantastic and how does this fit into the story? So in a previous story, if you know the story of Durga Ma, she has to get rid of and kill another devotee who has gained all this power and is now unstoppable. So Durga has to be she transformed or created with all the powers of the gods. Shiva, Vishnu, everybody, Hanuman, she has all the power, so she has to get rid of a god who's depicted as a bull, a brown bull. So after she gets rid of him, his sister seeks revenge. And then she's able to get certain powers so she can seek her revenge. But her revenge is so powerful, and that she starts killing and doing all these horrible things. And so she asked if you in most of the stories, if you show great devotion, you're granted boons. So you're granted these favors, these powers, and somehow the majority or half the stories is people abusing their power, or these creatures or these gods or these icons and idols misusing their power. So she's seeking her revenge because Durga killed her brother. So the boon that she asked is that she can only be killed by a child of Shiva and Vishnu. So I guess she didn't know that Vishnu turned into the ultra attractive Mohini, and Shiva couldn't control himself. So now Ayyappa is rolling around, and then sooner or later, Swami Ayyappa runs into Mahish Asuri. Asuri must mean the female deer, because her brother was Mahish Asura. Okay, so and then eventually Ayyappa runs into Mahish Asuri and kills her, gets rid of her, and he's revered. And there's probably thousands of other stories even behind that, and I'll try and put those together for my benefit, because it's just it's just intriguing and very intriguing to me. So he goes on, and there's a huge temple built to him and all that stuff, and he's celibate guy. And then so I'm just wondering, I stumbled across this story and I decided to bring it to the podcast, and then I just do a little Google search right behind. Is there anything going on? Because I kind of, in reading about it, doing the research, I thought maybe this is weird that this is the kind of the time where this god is worshipped, or they have devotion for Swami Ayyappa. And it turns out there is some kind of controversy. If you'd like, you can Google it yourself. Just put Ayyappa, Ayyappan, and just click on news, and there's some controversy there. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting, the whole story of Mohini and Vishnu and Shiva, and how it all intertwines, and it just keeps going on and on and on. And then in further research, well, maybe I'll bring some of these stories together. I'm trying to piece this together and trying to put it nicely. I don't know how well it translated, but thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for participating with the Higher Mind Yoga Podcast. And so in the pantheon and in the story of Shiva, you see the two main offspring that you hear about is, of course, Ganesha, the elephant-headed god, and Kartikeya. And that's another story on its own. Those are the two. But it turns out that Shiva has actually eight children. So Ganesha, Kartikeya, and then Ashok Sundari, which is a daughter, and another story where Parvati, the better half, I don't know if that's the right way to put it, or Parvati, the wife of Shiva, is so lonely because Shiva goes off, and does his meditations. He's got his own thing going on, that she's so lonely that she creates this other deity for herself to keep her company. And there's another story with that. I'm not going to go too deep, but just interesting stuff. So there's 8 altogether. I'm not going to go into all of them because, but another one that actually stuck out since I don't know, what do you call that? I don't know. I like snakes. I enjoy looking at them. I think they're beautiful animals, and how they're interwoven into all the mythology of religion and many religions. And Hinduism has a lot of aspects of serpents. Actually, Pantangelis is actually going back to the fallen angel. He's a fallen angel serpent god. He's supposedly the serpent that Vishnu lies on, the 5-headed. If you look at that imagery of Lord Vishnu, he's lying on a bed and there's a 5-headed snake. So somehow it's an avatar of that, who is Patanjali's, who is for the benefit of humanity. So another aspect of Shiva and one of his offspring is Manasa, the snake goddess. And we'll leave that story for another podcast. So with that, I'm going to play us out with a little mantra, the Ayyappa Gayatri mantra. I'll post a link on Higher Mind Yoga so you can enjoy it in its entirety if you'd like. Hopefully you enjoyed this little piece of my version of storytelling. Hopefully it'll get better as I learn more. And hopefully maybe you learn something. Who knows? Maybe you learn something. Maybe you can teach me something. And until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. Namaste. And you'll be listening to the Ayyappa Gayatri mantra. Thank you. Om Bodhanathaya Vidmahe Avaputraya Dhimahi Tanno Shasta Prachodayat. 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 Om Bodhanathaya Vidmahe Avaputraya Dhimahi Tanno Shasta Prachodayat.